Hey guys, so Trump is panicking about affordability and Fox News is coming to the rescue. Here is María Bartiromo of Fox News saying that Florida is a blue state too. This was completely out of the blue. When I heard this, I was like, wait, what? You know, these people are so desperate right now to try to rescue and save Donald Trump that they went as far as saying that Florida is a blue state. So take a listen. Let me just switch here quickly to the video.
People are frustrated with housing and the price of homes. People are frustrated with certain food items. But there are a number of things that President Trump has already been incredibly successful doing. So when he says this affordability issue is a hoax, he's right. He's basically talking about how the Democrats have taken this word affordability and used it as their calling card for the 2026 elections. They think that these Democrat wins that we just saw in Miami, in New York City, in other places like New Jersey, we shouldn't be surprised that the Democrats won those races. These are all blue states and cities. So it's no surprise there.
Really?
What is a surprise is that after all of these years,
listen to that again.
In other places like New Jersey, we shouldn't be surprised that the Democrats won those races. These are all blue states and cities. So it's no surprise there. What is
Oh my God. These people are so desperate right now. They are so desperate to downplay the economic crisis that they rather say Florida is blue. It just went blue. Florida just went woke before admitting Americans are tired of seeing the rich and the criminals win because, you know, between us, those appear to be the only people right now thriving under this new Trump administration. Those receiving massive tax breaks or criminals receiving pardons. But Americans, you know, middle class Americans, working Americans are tired. Trump got recently a $400 million plane, a $300 million ballroom. His family business has pocketed, around $8.4 billion. Let me repeat that, around $8.4 billion in just 10 months. How many of you have been able to duplicate, to double, to triple, or more, you know, your wealth during this year? Not many. I can tell you, not many. Nobody like Trump. So they are right when they say the economy is doing better. They're just not saying for who is getting better or who is actually getting screwed. But the thing is that Fox News, as we see, has been working hard. You know, I actually have been covering in my Spanish channel a couple of clips, and I covered one, maybe one or two on yesterday's episode. They have been working hard to save Trump these days. So let me play another clip right now for you of Kayleigh McEnany from Fox News 2. Let me switch it here quickly on screen. And now we can listen to that one. Kayleigh McEnany, the White House ex-press secretary, who, by the way, Donald Trump has attacked many times and mocked and insulted and, you know, mopped the floor with. And now Kayleigh is talking about affordability, and also she's playing a couple of clips of Donald Trump. So let's take a listen to that one right now.
Last hour, we told you about President Trump's affordability promise. The president says Democrats are using the buzzword as a political football.
They have a new word. You know, they always have a hoax. The new word is affordability. I can't say affordability hoax because I agree the prices were too high, so I can't call it a hoax because they'll misconstrue that. But they use the word affordability, and that's their only word. They say affordability, and everyone says, oh, that must mean Trump has high prices. No, our prices are coming down tremendously from the highest prices in the history of our country.
And the left is...
Of course, yeah. So, a couple of things right away. According to Trump, talking about affordability right now is a bad thing. Well, I guess it is after you campaigned for years talking about affordability, you know, that it was impossible under Biden and Kamala Harris. So going by Trump's own logic, I guess he found his own new hoax word during the campaign in 2024, which was, remember, groceries. I won on groceries. Oh, groceries. Take a listen. Let me play that one about groceries that I'm pretty sure I have that one here. Check it out.
I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, you know, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time.
When you buy eggs, they will double and triple in price. So this is a funny thing with Trump and the GOP. When they do something, when it's them doing it, it's original, it's necessary, it's always well-intentioned, right? It's well-timed. But when the Democrats do exactly the same thing, oh boy, it's always a scam, it's a fraud, it's a hoax. And, they have to be lying. Democrats, if it's Democrats talking about affordability, they have to be lying. For instance, when Trump insults people online, just to tell you how they use this double standard. When Trump does it, it's great. When Democrats do it, it's just, fraud or whatever. So when Trump insults people online and he's using all caps, he's original. He speaks his mind. He thinks outside the box. But when Gavin Newsom does exactly the same thing, mimicking Trump's style on Twitter and makes fun of Trump's own tweets in all caps, oh, Gavin Newsom is not funny, right? That's unbecoming of a governor. It's shameful for a person who is aspiring to maybe soon become a U.S. president. They have attacked Gavin Newsom day and night over him doing exactly the same thing Donald Trump does. And let me give you another example. In this case, of Benny Johnson, this right-winger influencer, big-time influencer, Benny Johnson, who just a couple of days ago, he posted this. Let me show you this graphic because when I saw this, it's like, man, you got to be shitting me. So he posted this on social saying, communist Zoran Mamdani has picked a convicted felon to advise him on public safety. Read that again. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this. This has to do with, the rapper Zoran Mamdani. For his transition team, he picked, this guy who happens to be a rapper and a very well-known community leader in New York. And he's a convicted felon. He was at some point arrested and processed and then jailed. And I believe he actually did around 7 years or so. The thing is that, he paid his dues. But now Benny Johnson is saying that he's absolutely shocked, right? He's like, communist Zoran Mamdani has picked a convicted felon to advise him on public safety. Read that again. So as soon as I saw that, I could tell, he's shocked that a convicted felon is part of Mamdani's team. And I was like, nah, you got to be, in this case, you got to be completely shitting me here because this is completely a hypocrisy. You can't all of a sudden set a different standard for Zoran Mamdani when you have literally a convicted felon, a 34-count convicted felon in the White House, and it was no problem. Trump wouldn't even be in the White House unless it was because the Supreme Court saved them, because the Supreme Court came up with this theory of the presidential immunity. You guys know that was absolute, bullshit that they pulled out of nowhere, out of whole cloth. Why? Because there's nothing like that in the Constitution. No prior president requested such a thing or needed such a thing. Maybe Nixon got a little bit close to it, but he never even tried to do something like that. But Donald Trump, did. Of course, he named 3 of the judges. Now there's 6 Republicans. And, they saved them. But anyway, that's how you can see the double standard, right? Donald Trump, if you use the word affordability, it's a fraud. And then María Bartiromo even saying that it's like a blue state, Florida, it's a blue state. And then you have Benny Johnson saying that, this, Zoran Mamdani picking a convicted felon, this is completely, ridiculous. It's just a bad sign or a bad thing. That's why they criticize it. The thing with Benny Johnson, the first thing that came to mind was, it was like, this is another distraction. This is just another distraction because number one, it's bullshit. Number two, you don't even have a leg to stand on when you don't have, at least this guy, the rapper, this guy went to jail. He paid his dues. He's done with, with the justice system. And since that was, I believe it was like in the 90s or so. Ever since he has been for 15, 20 years or more a community leader and a great person of influence, because, do we not believe in rehabilitation? Do we not going to give, how are you going to give, if you're a Republican, how are you going to say that a convicted felon deserves to be in the White House, and then any other convicted felon that has paid his dues, that already, did his time, and now he's just trying to get his life back on track, or it's been for years working hard to provide for his family, to contribute to the community. All of a sudden, those people don't deserve a chance to work in politics. That's one of the problems with Republicans. So one of the problems with Republicans, one of the problems with Trump. If one thing we have to do in life, is we have to be consistent. You just can't just say one thing just because of politics, and then when it suits you, just take it back and pretend you didn't say it. That's one of the funny things that happens all the time, that there's always a tweet, there's always some post, there's always a video, there's always some interview from years ago. Remember that they just recently published a couple of interviews of Pete Hegseth literally mopping the floor with Donald Trump in 2016 or so. 2016, 2017, something like that. And he was just literally talking very, very badly about Donald Trump. And all of a sudden, now, since, of course, they have a relationship, and he's part of the Pentagon, and he spent a couple of years after Trump won, kissing his ass. Then now, of course, now he says that Donald Trump is the best thing ever, the best president ever, and so on. So that's why they don't have credibility. That's why people laugh at people like Pete Hegseth or even Donald Trump. But anyway, let's move forward here with some additional information that I have for you guys. So notice when it comes to Trump, he's saying that only Democrats are using this word, affordability. Oh, they're using it in a way, it's a hoax, right? And the problem is not if Democrats use the word affordability or not, because Trump used it nonstop during his whole campaign in 2024, and it served him well. He won using that, affordability, groceries, and so on. The important thing is why Democrats are using it. That's the important thing here, why Democrats are using this word, affordability. If you guys remember, recently in November 4th, exit polls during the November 4th election, remember, New York and New Jersey and a couple of other places. What was the main thing that exit polls were saying? Consistently, they were actually saying, hey, voters are expressing, for instance, in New York, I remember, exit polls in New York showed that affordability and the economy, those two were the number one reason to vote for Mamdani, and actually for Democrats all over the nation. That's why we saw a complete bloodbath on November 4th, because Trump has been a disaster in many areas. But I can assure you one thing, even if he had been delivering, poorly in many other areas, if he had been delivering at least on the economy, probably Republicans would have performed way better on November 4th. But that didn't happen, because when you look at the polls right now, Donald Trump has always been, kind of like all over the place in different areas, different categories. But when it comes to immigration and the border and the economy, those were bread and butter. Those were the main things why a lot of people would vote for him. The same reason a lot of people voted for Mamdani right now, and the same reason why a lot voted for Aileen Higgins now in Miami-Dade, which was a big blow for Republicans. Everything comes down right now to the economy and to affordability. And one thing that Brian Tyler Cohen says a lot on his show is that there's a disconnect. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris went through that, and Democrats, we all went through that in 2024. We thought, we had that one in the basket. I'm telling you, myself, I started actually my Spanish podcast in around May 2024, a couple of months before Biden actually quit. And I was so sure, I started my Spanish podcast, and I'm like, I just want to contribute. Let me start helping, so I can actually reach our Hispanic community and help combat disinformation and yada, yada, yada. And I can tell you, in my mind, I was like, there is no way. There's no way. Biden had the best economy compared to all the G7 countries, the fastest recovery after the pandemic, the inflation way all the way up to 9%. But when he left office, it was already down to 3%, which was the fastest recovery in terms of inflation of any other developed country after the pandemic. 16 million jobs, so many bipartisan laws. The first law in like 30 years, the first gun control law in like 30 years, reauthorizing the law against, the act against, violence against women. They reauthorized that, the Science Act, the CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill, the American Rescue Bill. I'm telling you, many bills. We would have even like gotten the border bill had it not been, for Trump. Donald Trump stopped Republicans. We had a Republican-originated bill that it was originated by the Republican James Lankford. And it was a bipartisan bill. He had been working with Sinema and I don't know if Manchin and some others. It was a truly massive, very thorough bipartisan bill. And when push came to shove, what happened then? Biden said, "Bring it to my desk. I'm gonna sign it. I'm gonna sign it." And what happened? Donald Trump said no. So if Donald Trump hadn't gotten involved, because Republicans, we know they shit in their pants whenever Donald Trump starts to threaten them and pressure them and calling them directly in Congress and everything. They they don't have a spine, so they shit in their pants immediately and drop whatever they're doing. So Biden couldn't sign that law, but he was willing to sign it. He's like, let's do it. We have to do something about the border. I think he waited too long. If he had started probably to insist way sooner, they waited until, the last year? That was like 10 months out, when it came to the election. I think it was 10 months out, something like that, 9 to 10 months out. Still, enough time to actually get it done. But it was unfortunate because I think if they had kind of like maybe, I don't know, just had the same vision to try to like push for it and put some pressure, then probably Donald Trump wouldn't have been able to stop it, but he was able to stop it. But all I'm saying is Biden had all these things. Record high markets for the longest time, lowest unemployment for the longest time, lowest black unemployment for the longest time. And I'm telling you, 16 million jobs. 16 million jobs. Donald Trump left losing 3 million jobs. Biden had, to be exact, like 15.7, 15.8. Still, that's an average of 4 million jobs per year, on average. Biden didn't have a single month losing, jobs. So this is how I saw it. I'm pretty sure Biden saw it the same way. Probably Biden was sitting in, the Oval Office and thinking, you know what? I have all these accomplishments, all these bipartisan bills. I have been able to, sit down and work and negotiate. Not a single shutdown. Sorry, I'm thinking the word in Spanish, cierre de gobierno. Not a single shutdown in 4 years. Biden didn't have a single shutdown. That tells you that he's willing to work with the other side, because Republicans weren't just giving their votes for nothing. They always were asking and demanding something in return. And Trump was always saying, don't give Biden what he wants. Let the government shut down. We don't care. If he doesn't give us what we need, you don't vote to avoid the shutdown. But Biden was always able to somehow reach that happy medium, work out of good faith, no shutdowns. So that's the way I looked at it. I'm like, bro, we have an economy right now which is the envy of the whole world. Best economy, it's growing. That was one of the problems. Trump literally just talked about it. And I'm like, yeah, MF, now you're going to talk about that? About, we talk about inflation, but then you don't want to have deflation. But the thing is that, which is, when you have still inflation, which is kind of high. Why? Because the economy is still growing. So it's not like you have a recession, which now we do have. Now, since Trump took office, in a matter of like 3 or 4 months, immediately we started getting the signs of recessions. And now we have, obviously, experts as saying that in many areas of the USA, we do have recessions. But this is the thing, is we didn't have a recession. Biden's economy was still, growing. And the problem was that then there was not an incentive for companies and corporations, corporate greed and price gouging, there was not an incentive to actually lower prices. Because then at the same time, we saw corporations during that period making record profits. So that tells you right there that the economy wasn't hurting that bad. You can see, people were hiring, all the companies were hiring left and right, 16 million jobs. With Trump, they're not hiring. There's hiring freezes pretty much like nationwide right now. We already lost 1.1 million jobs in 10 months. So Trump is trending with the same numbers he got the first administration. He left with 3 million jobs that he lost. So that means that, what's its average in 4 years? If he lost 3, probably like, I don't know, like 1.3 to be exact, 1.333. That should be it. The average that he lost. But when it comes to Biden, you can see all these numbers. Everything was looking good. So in summary, I would look at all these things and say, there is no way. There's no way people will want to go back to the Trump economy when, he destroyed with his tariffs. He destroyed farmers. We had, unfortunately, people taking their lives, crisis. Unfortunately, if you go and check it on the newspapers, you're going to see there was a crisis. Farmers were taking their lives, and it started happening again now. I've seen on the news right now, a couple of them have already made fatal, unfortunate decision. We hope they don't. If anyone is listening, it's family member, they have farmers, they're a farmer themselves, please always seek help. That's the worst thing that, you can think of or do. There's always a way out. There's always something, But anyway, Donald Trump destroyed, farmers. And then he said he was going to be like the manufacturing jobs president. It wasn't. He left losing over 200,000 manufacturing jobs. So anyway, you think of that, the mismanagement of the pandemic. We ended up with 20% of confirmed COVID deaths compared to many other countries. That was the highest. That was the number one metric when it came to which country did the worst when it came to COVID. We are roughly the 5% of the world's population, but we ended up with 20% of the COVID-19 deaths because of Donald Trump's mismanagement. Since the very beginning, remember, Donald Trump didn't even want to tell the people how deadly the virus was. And then when he was confronted, because there was a recording, John Bolton, this is why John Bolton is paying the price right now. They're investigating John Bolton because John Bolton had interviewed Donald Trump and he had audio of Donald Trump in a call saying, so it's 5 times more deadly than the regular flu. Oh my God, so he knew. But then when he was confronted with that audio of the call that he knew it was 5 times more deadly, he said, well, yes, I knew it, but it's like I didn't want to alarm, the country. I thought, we could manage and do some things. Imagine there's a freaking tsunami. And then Biden saying, you know what? I don't want to tell the people in the East Coast or the West Coast or whatever, in the South. I don't want to tell them there's a tsunami may be coming because, we're trying to manage to see if we can do some things first. See if maybe we can go and start evacuating people without causing, any panic. That would be absolutely, bonkers. And that's what Donald Trump did. So, and anyway, I'm telling you, every single little aspect, category, thing that you can think of Donald Trump, let alone the corruption, let alone, the insurrection, let alone the classified documents, all these things. I was like, there is no way the countries want to go back. I'm saying that wrongly. They will want to go back to that. There's no way the country will want to go back to that. I thought. And then not only that, I'm thinking, after he left, which was the last disaster was the insurrection, then what did Donald Trump do? He had to face all these criminal cases, and he got convicted. He ended up being convicted of the 34 count, case, the felonies about Stormy Daniels, campaign finance violations. He ended up being found, liable, responsible of sexual abuse, defamation, and aggression in 2 separate cases. And then he was found liable of, committing fraud. The Trump administration faced a criminal case. This is something people sometimes will chat in the chat. They will say things and it makes me mad because sometimes they want to defend Donald Trump, but they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand that when it comes to the criminal case of the Trump administration, this is the Trump administration. Trump wasn't accused personally. His business, remember, organizations are their own. If they're a corporation, it's their own legal entity. So the legal entity, the Trump administration, had to face a trial, and some people actually had to pay the price for that. In this case, it was Alan Weisselberg, his chief financial officer. But they get mixed up because you talk about fraud in New York, Letitia James, and lying to the banks, lying to the insurance companies. That's not the case I'm referring to when I say that the Trump administration, his business, as a separate legal entity, a corporation, they were found in criminal behavior. They were processed criminally for criminal tax evasion. Criminal tax evasion, around 14 counts of criminal tax evasion. But the person who could actually tie Donald Trump to that criminal tax evasion, because there's this say, man, when it comes to the Bible and the church, there's a say that they will use in church. I'm going to try to translate it because I know it in Spanish, but I used to preach at some point earlier in my life, not anymore. I'm not, not even, I don't consider myself a religious person at this point in my life anymore, but I used to be a preacher at some point. So very interesting. Maybe one day I'll do a podcast just to talk about how the world, can, change and why. But the thing is that they would say something along the lines of, nothing happens, not a single little, particle of dust will move in the universe unless God wants it to move, right? I'm translating it. Probably there's a phrase like that in English which is better structured, but I'm translating from Spanish. So they would say nothing would happen in the universe, not even a little single particle of dust would move unless God wanted it to move. And that's what they would say when it came to Donald Trump's own business. That when it came to the Trump organization, nothing happened. No check was signed, no money would go out, no business deal would happen unless Donald Trump approved it. And that's when Alan Weisselberg, his chief financial officer, would come in and obviously take Donald Trump's instructions, directions, orders, suggestions, and he would just take care of all of that. And they found that they had two sets of books. The corporation, the Trump administration, had two sets of finance books, their spreadsheets or whatever they are counting. And on the same computer, they had the fake one that they would give the government saying hey, we're pretty much starving. We can't even pay taxes. Donald Trump paid in 2 years. I think one was 2017. I'm not sure if the other was 18 or 16, or maybe if I'm mistaken the years, but it was 2 years around that time. Donald Trump ended up paying a billionaire ended up paying $750 in taxes. Imagine that. A billionaire always bragging about all the money he's always making, and he ended up paying only $750. I'm pretty sure a full-time, McDonald's or not even Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A sometimes pays a little bit more. Let me say Sonic. A full-time Sonic employee, or the lowest paying fast food chain that you can find. Find a full-time employee and check how much they pay during the year, how much they take out. I can assure you, in the whole year, it's more than $750. And many of these people make roughly sometimes, $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 if they're lucky. Doing a full-time and sometimes working close to the minimum, $10, $11, you're going to be around anywhere from 18, 20, depending if you get any additional incentives or if you do some overtime, but it's going to be around that. But then the guy who, supposedly earning billions of dollars would have this accounting book on that computer saying, we're starving, we're not making money. But then they had a separate set of accounting, spreadsheets or whatever, their accounting information. And that one was the one with all the true information, all the real information. And that's where they had the hidden money. That's where they had a bunch of bonuses that they were paying employees. They had people getting cars that they were getting, incentives for cars, or scholarships, or they were getting free apartments. All these things registered by employee. But then these employees wouldn't report that either, to the government, because everything was, kind of under the table, behind the scenes, and there was no true real record of it. It was either cash things or just kind of these weird exchanges. It was criminal. So in the end, they ended up processing the Trump administration. They went to trial, a criminal trial. It's the go and read about it, because I hate it when I start reading about these comments from, I don't know, just blind Trump supporters that tell me, no, that wasn't criminal, that was civil or whatever. The fraud in the New York cases that Letitia James brought forward because of the bank fraud and the insurance fraud, yes. And then when it came to the Stormy Daniels case, that one was actually a criminal case. That's how he became a convicted felon. That was the campaign finance violations and the creation of false companies and false documents so they could hide the payments that they were going to use these shell companies so they could pay Michael Cohen. So there's so many cases people don't even keep up, especially Trump followers, Trump MAGA, fanatical, blind, lackeys. Why? Because they don't even care about the facts. They care about believing whatever Trump says is true. And Trump says it's a witch hunt. It must be a witch hunt. So I'm not going to read shit about actual facts. I'm not going to try to find, more like neutral channels or newspapers or media, that there's many out there that, will give you just the facts. You can just go and read the court cases yourselves and read what was presented, what was the evidence. And they had the lawyers, Trump had lawyers trying to show why it was supposed to be fake or false or a witch hunt, and the jury didn't buy it. Unfortunately, the jury didn't buy it. So say what you will, but anyway, Donald Trump had all of that. So then in my mind, I'm thinking, remember, connecting back to the, Biden doing great and all his numbers and everything, and I'm thinking, so Biden had this great run. Donald Trump fucked up badly. He messed up badly during his 4 years in office. And I'm not going to say everything Donald Trump did was bad, but I'm going to say that almost everything he did was bad, okay? He might have had a couple of wins here and there, but for the most part, he screwed, the working class. He screwed the most financially challenged in this country. He screwed the sick people who were sick. He screwed the unions, and you name it. He screwed the environment. He screwed, our foreign relations. Donald Trump pretty much destroyed everything. And now he left screwing democracy and even the trust in our institutions, the trust in the courts and the justice system. So now I'm like, we are definitely not losing. We're not losing. We have the greatest economy. We have the greatest bounce back after the pandemic. Donald Trump has not only an awful record in office, but once he left, he has all these, civil and criminal cases, and he still had a bunch of other cases pending. There is no way. This guy is dead politically. This is how I'm seeing it. There's no way Biden is going to lose. And then, he just kept repeating the same thing. Oh, the big lie. Oh, the stolen election. Oh, witch hunt. Oh. And what happened then, the first debate came around, I think it was probably June 2024. That's when I'm telling you, that's when around the time that I'm like, I need to start doing some podcasts, at least for my Spanish speaking, community. And that's how I got involved, because like, man, we need to get something going, because after that first debate, I was like, oh shit. After the first, I'm being honest, to be honest with you, I didn't even think Biden should have run. I thought he should have just quit and say that he was not seeking re-election. Why? Because for the last, maybe the first year, maybe the first 2 years, he was still doing good. But the last maybe year, especially year and a half, maybe especially last year, but a year and a half, maybe 2 years, he failed a couple of times. And sometimes you could tell the signs were starting to show. And he was still doing a great job. He was still capable, because being the U.S. president doesn't mean that you have to be an Olympic athlete or so, right? His mind was still working, and he was doing a great job, and we could see the results. But I didn't want to have the distraction. I was tired of Fox News, freaking 724, talking, oh, look at that, Biden just fell. Look at that, Biden had to be, helped because he got lost. Oh, Biden was completely spaced out. He was lost. He didn't know what was going on. And sometimes it was just like doctor video, the way they cut it, and they wouldn't show the scenes or whatever. Like this one that he was out in a field. Remember this one? Biden was out in a field, and somebody was taking a picture, and it looked like he was just completely lost, just looking somewhere else. The camera angle didn't show what was going on. If I'm not mistaken, I think some veterans were landing like in parachutes, and he was actually watching these people land and all of that. Yes, he got disconnected from whatever was happening on the other side for a moment, but it's not like he was completely lost. He was actually paying attention to these other parachuters that were just landing. And he was maybe he was impressed about the fact that they just landed a couple of meters away from him or something. So when you see a different angle of the video, now you understand, oh, he was just looking at, something else. It was not that he was just like there like a zombie. But still, I just didn't want that anymore. I went like, I'm done with that. I'm done with Biden. He's a great, in my eyes, a great president. He did a great job. Not perfect. I have my my qualms and my different problems and complaints, but probably one of the best, if not the best, in this modern era. And of course, MAGA's not going to agree. I don't care. But all I'm saying is that, look, this is something you MAGA guys should do. I was supportive of Biden, but once I saw that physically and mentally he was starting to decline, I was one of the early, people on my social media and so on, because the first like 2 years and a half, I was not doing like anything public. But I wanted him to just not run. Why? Because I didn't want Fox News to be doing this every single day. We had so much at stake and so much was going on and so many good things to talk about. And then the conversation was always steering towards like, oh, look at Biden. He just fell again. And I'm like, we don't need this. And then once the debate finally came around, I was like, holy shit. I was like, no, we are definitely in deep shit right now. If we don't come up with a change, we need some change. But I'm like, it's already too late. We had a primary. Some people complain, but we had initially we had a primary. I just believe that if Biden had not seek re-election, that primary would have been full. Because, there's always loyalty, which is good, but at the same time, it's a bad thing because, you want to be loyal to your current president. He's doing a good job. So a lot of people understand there's power in the re-election process. The power of re-election it's established. Even George W. Bush won re-election back to back, being one of the worst presidents in modern history. Even him, he won. We know the power of re-election is real. So Biden was counting on all of that. Donald Trump has all these legal cases. He has the awful, history. We know about the January 6th. We know about the committee, January 6th committee, all the investigations, all the things that they uncovered. And then all the things that came up with Georgia, the RICO case, and then there were more cases in different jurisdictions. But there was a disconnect. What was the disconnect? At the same time, we were thinking we had everything in the basket. We had the 2024 election in the basket. We forgot about affordability. We forgot that as much as in paper, the economy was looking great, everything was trending in the right direction, and the economy was growing, that was only on paper. People were not feeling. The problem with Donald Trump is that it looks bad on paper, and in reality, people are still screwed. They're fucked too. But that's the problem. What I'm saying here is that we learned our lesson. We have to listen to the people. Just because you are in power, you shouldn't stop doing what you were doing when you lost. When Donald Trump lost, what did he do? He set a table. I don't know if this was in oh man, where did he set this table? I don't know if this was in the Oval Office or somewhere. Remember, he set a table with all these groceries things. He started talking about eggs and I don't know, prices of meat and all these things. And he was showing the different items. Absolutely ridiculous. Everybody was laughing, saying, this guy has never even gone to the supermarket himself. He doesn't even know. That's why he was so surprised when he said, oh, you know what? I just discovered the word groceries. Groceries. Who uses the word groceries? And people were like, MF? Everybody, there's not a different word for food. People don't go, yes, I'm buying food in the supermarket. You say I'm going to buy groceries. You have grocery stores. It's a category. It's a category, in like Yellow Pages books. It's a category on online. You go to find businesses, classified business directories, or you classify as ads, and you're gonna find that you find different types of stores or businesses, and then you're gonna find grocery stores. It's just category. Donald Trump is like, who uses that word? Yeah, who uses that? So I started using that word, and I won talking about groceries. But he started doing that when he wanted to win, when he wanted to actually somehow connect with the pain that the people were feeling because he lost originally, because he didn't address that pain. Remember, in 2017, they passed the law to actually help the rich. And the tax breaks for the rich in 2017. And what happened in 2019? They had one of the biggest losses in Congress history, where Democrats were able to flip over 40 seats. Over 40 seats. Why? Because they helped the rich, and Donald Trump didn't deliver, and that year was a disaster, and a lot of things happened. So they ended up having exactly the same thing that we're seeing right now. Donald Trump came in, they immediately helped the rich. They got, they passed the main goal, his main priority, which was helping the rich. And then, there's this little, how they call it, breadcrumbs, falling off the table. Let me see whatever, we call that in Spanish, migajas. Migajas, I believe, is the breadcrumbs. It's just little pieces of bread, whatever food that fall off the table, and you let your dog lick them. That's what he's giving us right now. Why? Because now they're saying, taxes on tips are going to, kick in very soon. Yeah, that's a hoax. Go and read about why it's a hoax. I'm not going to get into it right now because, this podcast is already too long. It's already 40 minutes. I was planning on doing probably 10 to 15, and I'm at 40. But still, that was our mistake. We thought we had it in the basket, and we underestimated that people were not feeling that, golden era, the Biden golden era, even though he never promised a golden era, but still, people were not feeling the Biden success. But let's say people were not feeling Bidenomics in their pockets. They didn't address price gouging, and that's how Kamala came up with, price gouging as one of her campaign promises. I'm going to start a national federal level price gouging ban. We're going to come up with some law, some project. I'm going to sign it. We're going to make sure that we pursue not to actually control prices, but to actually investigate and prosecute people that were exploiting, Americans. Because we do have price gouging laws in many states, including red states. Texas has them, Florida has them, and many others. These are the laws that you use when you have, national emergencies, or when you have a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever it is. You want to make sure that people are not taking advantage of those situations to increase prices, jack them up, right? So we have price gouging laws, but we don't have anything at the national level. And then rent, we know there's a problem with Wall Street, all the rich people, and even people now. This is crazy. Like investors from from outside of the U.S. are buying houses. They're saying that by, I believe it's 2030 now, which is around the corner. They're saying, I believe the stat that I saw is that at least 40%, if not more, of all new houses in the United States are going to be in the hands of these, investors, these super rich investors. Not in the hands of people. And what they do recently, just reading about that article, one of the things that I saw was that this super rich company bought, I don't remember how many houses, hundreds if not thousands of houses. And in one of the communities that they bought pretty much most of the inventory, you know what they did? Immediately, they sold 3 houses to their own company. They bought them back. They have some legal structure to be able to do something like this. But why does that matter? Because remember, anytime you're going to buy a new house in a community, or even a house, you have to go and look at the LMS software that realtors use for to compare the most recent sales, and that's when they're going to see, hey, the most recent sales here at 3 are all of a sudden they increase the price. They bought them like around $450,000. They increased them to like $700,000. So they sold 3 houses around $700,000 to manipulate the market. So all of a sudden, overnight, your home value went up from $450,000, $475,000, all the way up to $700,000. Why? Because these rich people came and they bought 3 new houses in that same community, and they bought more, but then they sold 3 of them back to themselves for $700,000, because now once they start selling all the inventory they bought, Now they have those new, most recent references, which are the ones who are going to impact price. So I'm telling you, this is like there's so much that has to be addressed when it comes to corporate greed. We see corporations. This is something Bernie Sanders will, he'll just die talking about. And I love the way he expresses this, because you can tell he's 100% genuine. The same thing he's been doing his whole life, and combating, corporate greed and all these things. But they didn't do that. Biden and Kamala Harris didn't do that. So they achieved a lot. They helped a lot. They passed a bunch of laws, but they failed to connect with the actual pain people are feeling, especially going through the pandemic and then after the pandemic. And that's why, as much as we thought we had it in the bag, we didn't. And it's exactly the same mistake Republicans are committing right now. They think they'll have it in the bag. They think that by just denying that the economy is suffering, that just criticizing those who talk about affordability, saying that it's a Democrat hoax, they think they're doing something good. Instead of admitting that, hey, we're not there yet. We haven't been able to do the things that we want to do. And of course, they are promising and saying that, yes, this next year, J.D. Vance was literally saying, yeah, I'm sure that 2026 is going to be our best year. Finally, things are going to start getting back on track. Of course, but that's not what you said in 2024. In 2024, you guys, got on the mic and said, yeah, on day one, Donald Trump said, on day one, prices are falling and they're going to fall fast. Donald Trump said by the beginning of 2026, electricity prices will fall by 50% in the beginning of 2026. If I'm not mistaken, that's in 2 weeks, right? So, hey, good news, guys. Let me give him a round of applause. In 2 weeks, electricity prices will fall by 50% according to Donald Trump's promise. So they're going to do the same thing, and then once January hits and, it starts and nothing happens and electricity doesn't fall, we're going to still be blaming Biden. I remember a reporter asked Donald Trump a great question. Some time ago, they asked him, hey, Mr. President, at what point does the economy, the Biden economy, become the Trump economy? Because, you told people so many things that on day one, you were going to end the Ukraine war. On day one, prices would fall, and they would fall so fast. Rent prices, car prices, whatever, everything. Jobs would, companies would be soaring and, just making money left and right. That's not exactly what's happening. So, and anytime we ask you, it's like, well, we inherited a mess. Well, you knew it. You campaigned saying it was a mess. You knew that. It's not like you came in thinking everything was, all tidy and great, right? You knew. This is exactly what you said when you were campaigning. This is a mess. This is why you have to bring me in. And on day one, you're going to notice the Trump effect. On day one, I'm going to start lowering prices. And then he was like, well, it's not going to be that easy, the Biden economy. It was a disaster. Oh, I think things were worse than we actually expected them to be. Now that we're seeing the real numbers, it was way worse than we thought it was going to be. Just a bunch of bullshit. I understand. There's no magic wand. I was not expecting Donald Trump to come in and just swing the same magic wand he used to declassify the classified documents, talking to no one with no process, no other agency getting involved, nothing happening. Just him, moving the magic wand around, swinging it. And in that same way, I knew he was not going to be able to come in and just, say, economy fix, ding! or like, I don't know if you guys remember that old show, I Dream of Jeannie. It was just something like that. Yeah, economy fix, ding! I know it doesn't work like that. So I have to be fair. Even myself, in this case, being a progressive, being a Democrat, I understand that there is going to be a transition time whenever a new administration happens. Even if Gavin Newsom were to win, or Kamala Harris, or Pete Buttigieg, or who knows, whoever runs, or AOC and wins, there's going to be a transition process, and they're not going to be able to fix things overnight. It's still going to take some time to start seeing some results. But even then, the steps that we see the government taking are not even the steps that they promised they were going to take. And again, go and check the taxes, taxes on tips thing. It's a scam. Go and check the overtime thing. Again, that's a scam. I'll just give you the example of the overtime one. So they say, we're going to make your overtime exempt. You're not going to have to pay taxes on overtime. And you see the MAGA, crowd. Yeah, no taxes on overtime. Yeah. Okay. First of all, not everybody works overtime. Second of all, this is how they structure the law. All these benefits will expire in 2028. So some of them will start kicking in 2026, and all of them will expire in 2028. None of that is permanent. But the tax breaks for the rich, those are permanent. Not, the things that they offer you. Number one. Number two, when it comes to the overtime help, the super great benefit, you know how it works? So you would think, well, if I work 20 hours overtime, bro, 20 hours, that's, whatever, I don't know, I make $20, $30 an hour. That's a lot of money. Unfortunately not. A lot of companies that these days are paying only time and a half. They don't even pay double overtime. It's time and a half. So you know what they did? They structured a law saying that overtime, whatever is going to be exempt, is anything over your normal wage. So if you worked 20 hours overtime, 30 hours overtime, you still have to discount those 20 or 30 hours at your normal wage, because that's not going to be exempt. And then whatever's over that, which is at that point, it's time and a half, then whatever's over that, your normal wage, then that's the only amount that you're going to be able to claim. That's the only amount that's going to be exempt. And the same thing happens with tips. It's only up to like $25,000. If you make more than that, that's not going to help you. And then people who make below $25,000 when it comes to the tips still already qualify for a bunch of other things. So it's just like adding stuff there. It sounds like they're helping people, but it's literally nothing. When you start really looking at it, the impact is minimal, and it really doesn't solve your problems. It's not like because the taxes on tips, I'm going to finally be able to afford, a car for my daughter. I'm going to finally be able to afford a car for my wife. We're going to finally be able to buy the new house that we always dreamed of because, taxes on tips are kicking in now in, January. And you have to do the math. You have to do the math, guys. We just can't keep going on in this country the way we're doing, just in such a partisan way that we just can't see the good and the bad on both sides. That's like a real problem. But anyway, going back to the news that I was telling you about. So they said that Democrats won in November 4th in states that were not red states. Yeah, this is nothing. November 4th means absolutely nothing. We know that's not true because they still spent millions campaigning to win those states, those battlegrounds. Look at how it works. New York, blue state, yeah, it means nothing. We were expecting Democrats to win. So then why even run? You don't want to win New York? Wasn't Donald Trump endorsing Cuomo? Wasn't Donald Trump telling people, if you choose Mamdani, I'm going to take your federal funds away? I'm not going to give you the federal funds to New York City? So it apparently matters, right? Trump made a bunch of Truth Social posts endorsing candidates, all over the country for these elections. And all of his candidates, by the way, all of them lost. But Republicans kept saying, they won in places they were supposed to win, but not in red states. Well, that wasn't true either. Because on November 4th, Democrats flipped seats even in Georgia, which is a red state. And now, last week, like I was saying, we saw probably one of the most devastating losses for Trump and Republicans in Miami-Dade. A ruby red city, let me repeat that, a ruby red city in a ruby red state in a city which Donald Trump won by 12 points in 2024, double digits, 12 points in 2024. And if the economy was soaring and people were, just filling their pockets with money and people were feeling, starting to kind of like soak in the golden era, I don't see why they wouldn't have chosen the Trump-endorsed candidate in Miami-Dade. Again, ruby red city, ruby red state that Donald Trump won by 12 points in 2024. But then Aileen Higgins, the Democrat, beat the shit out of Trump's candidate and out of Cuban Republicans, because Cuban Republicans dominate Miami-Dade. They have dominated politics for almost or over 30 years. But they lost by 19 points and to a woman. So all of a sudden, Miami-Dade went woke. Apparently, people were broke, so they went woke. Let's choose a woman. So I was like, whoa, man, like Trump says, too big to rig. 19 points? Not even Donald Trump. Listen. Not even Donald Trump won by 19 points in ruby red Miami-Dade. And that led to people like Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters, which actually surprised me. Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters, because of this Miami-Dade in a red state, super red state, fundamental red state to Republicans, and this super red, ruby red city, these two Fox hosts that are normally Trump loyalists, they both said, we're losing there's no way we're gonna keep it. We're losing the House of Representatives in 2026. No question about it. Like what happened in Miami-Dade, it's a solid signal right now of what's to come. But the thing is that Trump knows he hasn't done much to help the working class, those who need it the most. If anything, he has actually abandoned them and screwed them by signing the big, beautiful bill and helping, once again, the rich while screwing the middle class and the financially challenged. So, guys, don't let them fool you when they say everything is better right now, or when they say that we shouldn't be talking about affordability because it's a hoax. It's a hoax the way Democrats use the word now. But it wasn't a hoax when Trump used it, when he was on the other side of the fence of the White House. And if one thing we have to be in life, I'm going to repeat this. If one thing we have to be in life is consistent. No more double standards. So that's pretty much all I had for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. My name is Daniel Aranzamendi. I'm hosting also a Spanish podcast pretty much daily. It's called Aranzamendi Podcast Español. So if you speak Spanish, or if you have any Spanish-speaking friends, family members, co-workers, please send them to my channel, Aranzamendi Podcast Español. I also have been working with Brian Tyler Cohen for the past almost 3 years, helping him with his Spanish channel. I helped him launch his Spanish channel. Is called Brian Tyler Cohen Español. So if you want to help us out and you like the content that Brian creates, we're translating and dubbing everything 3 to 4 episodes every single day to Spanish. And we definitely need support to, keep reaching more people within the Hispanic community. So please, if you can visit these two channels, my same, last name that you see here, Aranzamendi Podcast Español, like and subscribe, and then Brian Tyler Cohen Español. And of course, this channel, which is my newest channel, the English channel. I had this channel for a while that I really wasn't too into doing podcasts in English. And but now, there's so much disinformation and misinformation, and I have so many good episodes in Spanish structure that I'm like, what the hell, I'm gonna do it. So bear with me and let me say I'm sorry sometimes. So, I'll stutter a little bit here and there. I was born here in the United States. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I learned English first. But once I think when I was around 4 years of age, my mom moved back to Puerto Rico, and I lived there for almost 36 years before returning here. And now I've been here in the mainland in Texas, actually for nine years. So, Spanish became my main language. After I learned English first, I had to then learn Spanish in Puerto Rico. And imagine, 35 years, it became obviously my main language. So as much as I can hold my own and I feel comfortable and everything, I don't feel the same as I do in Spanish, of course. So that's why originally when I got here, I was not doing politics anyway, but I was not too into doing podcasts until I felt probably maybe a little bit more comfortable, with the culture, trying to get back, acquainted and settled. And before, starting to do what I did back in Puerto Rico, I used to do, journalism and many other, things, advertising, marketing, a professional photographer. I'm also work with musical productions, many hats, many different things. I'm a workaholic, but I love content creation. I work with journalism. I had my own newspaper back in Puerto Rico, and I was a consultant for digital content creation, digital strategies, social media management, and all these things through my advertising agency back in Puerto Rico. Consultant for over maybe 9 or 10 newspapers, including national newspapers in Puerto Rico. That for many years I was actually the sole provider or even the main consultant helping with most of their marketing and digital stuff. So this is something I definitely love doing, like doing, and I think I'm in a position right now that I can help, when it comes to all this, information and disinformation dynamic that we have going on, which is so dishonest and so intense. I'm telling you, we have a lot going on in Puerto Rico, but once I got here, I'm like, man, this is a shit show. What we have going on here in the mainland, the tension and how intense, all these battles are. And then one thing that we have here that unfortunately, I came to experience, but we really don't have in Puerto Rico. We don't experience. There's actually a couple of things, but two of them that really shocked me. Number one is the racism. So sad, so unfortunate that we have, political parties really, just feeding us all these narratives that, especially, in this case, I have to be honest, especially Donald Trump and this far-right faction, that has taken over the Republican Party right now. There's so much when it comes to racism that we don't see that in Puerto Rico. Why? Because in Puerto Rico, I joke, I tell people, we're a remix. I tell people why? Because, we're the combination of Spaniards and native Taínos, Indian Taínos, Indios Taínos from Puerto Rico, and then Africans too. So we're a mix of those three races. So in Puerto Rico, you have white people with brown eyes, you have black people with blue and green eyes, and, we have all those shades of different, skin colors, and nobody talks racism, very rarely. Now with Donald Trump, I hear that people that started following Trump, obviously they're following the narrative, and then there's this whole movement maybe starting that's kind of like driving a little bit more certain incidents and conversations on social media that were not a part of a culture like ever. You would hear maybe that there was like some racist related incident on news, maybe once every year or 2 years, that somebody maybe, complain about something, or maybe somebody, wrote some hateful message on somebody's, wall or house. I'm telling you, that could be maybe once every 2 years, every 3 years. You don't have that. So that's a dynamic that I have to kind of like adapt to getting to this, the country, to the mainland here, in terms of like how intense it is, how people are just manipulated this easy into thinking that somehow we're different because we have different skin color. For real. That's one thing. And the other thing then is the gun-loving, sick, culture, which is cultish. It's literally cultish. It's a destructive cult, what they're promoting here in the States. In Puerto Rico, we had, I've been out 9 years, and I know the NRA and different companies have been trying for a long time to make a push. But Puerto Rico had one of the toughest laws, probably if not the worst, compared to that of the whole country, of the whole, the mainland. And in Puerto Rico, it's very hard. It was, at least when I was there, it was still very hard to get a gun. It was not immediate. They would do background checks. They would even send sometimes people to like your community to interview people. The background checks were very extensive. There were waiting periods, and then it was expensive too. Like getting a gun in Puerto Rico back in the day would cost you probably, $800, $1,000 or more, because you had to pay all these things, your permits, and you had to take trainings. So all I'm saying when it comes to that, that's another big difference that I saw, coming here. Is just like I'm sitting down at my table, and, I have all these shoppers, Walmart and this and that, and then I had, what's the store? This is a store, I don't know if it's like Atwoods or something like that, but anyway, on all these shoppers, I'm like just browsing just regular items for the house, and then you have all these guns, and I'm like, man, they just sell guns like this, just like buying, just like, bread and butter. Yeah, I want a gun. Yeah, just have my ID, do a quick checkup, and then you're out with a gun or whatever. These are little things that really caught my eye, because then in Puerto Rico, even though we have a very violent culture in Puerto Rico, because we do have a lot of crime in Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, it's a spot for drug trafficking and all these things, and it's a big when it comes to drug dealers and all of that. There's always a lot of wars, for turf, for areas. They want to control, the areas, the turf. So there's a lot of killings related to drugs down in Puerto Rico, which normally would have a really high, murder rate. But one thing we don't see in Puerto Rico, as much as we have a lot of, just violent crime and primarily between, like, let's say drug gangs and all of that, we don't have mass shootings in Puerto Rico. I mean school mass shootings, because when it comes to drugs, if they want to kill somebody, I don't know, like a big shot or whatever, and they go to a shopping mall and the guy is there, they're going to just spray the whole people there. Unfortunately, that happens. We've seen when they go to kill somebody related to the drug, world, sometimes they'll kill 6, 7, 8 people. You see those kind of like mass shootings down there, but it's always drug related. You never, even to this day, I've been here 9 years now in the States, and I've never heard a single news from Puerto Rico where somebody woke up and said, you know what, I just want to smoke everybody at church today. I want to smoke everybody at a school. I want to kill, like I want to get rid of, like, let me just watch my language so I don't get canceled. But anyway, I just want to make sure that I go and, I don't know, just attack, kids, innocent kids at a school. That doesn't happen in Puerto Rico. And we have a lot of illegal guns in Puerto Rico. So I'm not saying because we have strict gun control laws, we don't have mass shootings, because we do have guns, a lot of illegal guns in Puerto Rico. But actually, a lot of them, flow from the United States. Same thing that happens with Mexico, same thing as that happens with Chicago. They're like, criminals are always going to find a way. Yeah, they find a way to go to the neighboring red states with lax gun control laws, and 40, 50, 60% of those guns end up in Chicago or in Mexico. Mexico is like 70%, maybe a little bit higher. That all the guns that they recover from crime scenes or crime-related activities, 70% of those guns come from the United States. Many of them are bought legally, and then, there's straw man purchases, or they report them, stolen, or whatever it is. They come from the United States. So I'm not saying that that's the reason we don't have mass shootings in Puerto Rico, and like in schools and churches, and just for the sake of killing people. That doesn't happen there. So it's just more like a cultural thing. My concern is that, monkey see, monkey do. Sooner or later, we have such a big influence. We're part of the USA. Puerto Rico is part of the USA. We're a U.S. territory. Everybody has citizenship since like 13 or 14 or something like that. Automatic citizenship. You're born in a U.S. Soil. You're definitely. In Puerto Rico's soil. You're a U.S. citizen. But still, there's a cultural difference, and I believe it has more to do with the fact that we don't have this racist based division. That's my theory. I haven't even discussed this with any psychologist or anthropologist or sociologist or whatever. It's just my kind of like gut instinct telling me that a lot of these killings, when you check what's going on here, a lot of these radical people killing in schools and churches and all that, normally, more often than not, we know, whether you like it or not, 75% are related to white supremacist groups. That's something, a report that the DOJ removed recently from their website. But we know this has been around, and obviously it's been documented, and there's records. Somebody has to tell Pam Bondi and Kash Patel that if you remove something from a website, doesn't mean it disappears. A lot of these things are documented. Once you put them out, a lot of organizations will also document these things and download the documents and save them precisely for, posterity, to make sure that we have that information available in different databases in case a government wants to start going tyrannical and deleting all these things and changing things. So, we have a record of what was there. But we know at least it's like 75% of mass, shootings are, and local, terrorist acts are perpetrated, unfortunately, by white supremacist, related groups. And since we don't have that kind of hate, like boiling every single day down in Puerto Rico, I think people just don't have that same motive, because then you see what I was going to say is that once they start investigating these people, they normally have some sort of tie to like extremist groups here in the States. And they have a lot of messaging and social media, and there's a lot of influence that is from this political background when it comes to just this separation and culture war that we have going on here in the States, which is very unfortunate. Very, very, absolutely highly unfortunate. And this is why I want to do, this podcast daily. I think we definitely can do better. I think we can find, middle ground, common ground to just coexist. We don't have to be the same, but we can learn to coexist. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Now I'm leaving. Thank you so much, guys, for all the comments. There's 644 comments or so. A lot of people connected here. Thank you all. I'll do my best to try to go and reply to some of you later. I always try to do so. But I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in. And I promise I'll be back tomorrow with, some more information, more news, more analysis, more political commentary. And maybe I'll start responding later to some of you and see if I can discuss some of these comments in tomorrow's episode. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good rest of your day, okay? Bye-bye.